Hello everyone, welcome to another live hangout here at Voice Essentials. It's Monday, it's 1 p.m. That is where I am in Brisbane, Australia. Whatever the time may be in your part of the woods, and for those of you who are watching the show or listening to the show as a replay, welcome. I hope you are well and in good health. I had my fourth booster shot here on the weekend for COVID. We are so privileged in Australia to have access, free access to COVID vaccines. And my wife and I had our fourth shot on Saturday. And I was wondering this morning why I just feel a little bit off, you're just a little bit off the boil. And then I thought, oh, hang on a second, I had my fourth COVID shot. So that is that's probably it. I didn't pull up very well after my PT session at the crack of dawn this morning. And so, anywho, I'm feeling a little bit, you know how, for those of you who have had the vaccine, you just feel a little bit flat for a few days afterwards. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment. As you know, we do these live hangouts, and we're not here to listen to me rabbit on about my vaccination status. We do these live hangouts here every week, Monday, 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Today we're doing a Q&A. This is our third Q&A in a row, which has been really great. We've had so many great questions. If you've got a question today, make sure you throw it into the live chat, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. If you're listening to the show as a replay, or you're watching the show as a replay, don't hesitate to throw your questions into the comment sections if you have any. And I do my best to answer your questions in the comments. But of course, we're able to sort of unpack the question a little bit more in our live chat. So if you've got a question today, throw it into the live chat. Linda will grab it, and I'll do my best to answer it. Of course, if you want to throw a super chat alongside that question, that is, put some money where your pen is, then we'll prioritize that question and make sure it gets answered. And and all super chats are gratefully received. Next week, we have Shannon, Dr. Shannon Coates from Canada. She's joining us. We're going to be talking about inclusive singing. And she's very passionate about inclusive teaching and inclusive singing. We here at Voice Essentials, we believe it's the birthright of every person to sing. Voice Essentials is a place where everybody sings, bar none. We don't believe in the fallacy that is you're either a singer or you're not a singer. Everyone is a singer. And everyone's voice deserves to be heard. And we're going to unpack that even further with Dr. Shannon Coates. For those of you who have been watching the show for any length of time, we've been doing this live show for a few years now. If you've been watching the show, you'll know Dr. Shannon, and she's fantastic. We have a lot of fun when she comes on the show. So make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the white bell icon so you get your notification next week for when we go live. And in fact, when you do that, you'll get a notification every Monday at 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, so that you can be reminded. The week after that, we'll have another Q&A, and the week after that, we're going to be having Dr. Oh, now I've gone. I should have written this down. Dr. Robinson is her name. Why have I gone blank? I'll remember it as we go along. Anyway, we're going to be talking about soul singing. Why is my brain just not... I reckon it's the vaccine. Seriously. I am so thankful to have the vaccine, but in moments like this, you go, where has my brain gone? I have no idea where it's just like, woohoo! In fact, funny thing is, immediately after we'd had the vaccine, Jody, my wife, said, oh, we need to quickly go and grab something from the local grocery store, and which was fine. And I said, yeah, no worries. And so as we drove away, I have no idea why I did this, but as we drove away, I started heading towards a grocery store, and this is all going on in my mind. Literally, that would have been, I would have driven past 3 other grocery stores to get to this particular grocery store. Now, can I blame the vaccine for that seniors moment? I don't know, but I'm going to, because it was weird. And then she said, oh, well, where are you going? I said, oh, and then I saw the grocery store that she meant as we drove past it. And then she said, oh, we'll just go down here and turn. And so when I did the loop, I came back, and then I didn't take the turn off. I had to go. It was a bizarre run of circumstances. Anyway, so today might just be, our hangout today might just be a little bit, what is he on? We're going to blame everything on the vaccine today. But I will do my best to create as much clarity in my answers to your questions as I possibly can. Hey, just don't forget to, for those of you who haven't been here for a couple of weeks, I've launched a brand new reiteration, if you will, a refurbished 7 Days to a Better Voice. It is my completely free, 100% free singing course, a 7-day singing course. It's got instructional videos. Look, this is worth $70. Yeah, $59.95 is what it's worth. But you get it for free when you sign up, and the links are going along the bottom of the screen. It's coming along now, and so if you've never signed up for that, here's an opportunity for you to sign up. 7 Days to a Better Voice. It's really great. If you've done it before, you can sign up again because we've kind of rebooted the whole thing, and I think you'd really enjoy it. And even if you just want to dedicate a really passionate, engaged week with your voice, 7 Days to a Better Voice is a great way to do that. And before we get into the Q&A, just a reminder, I've been doing, getting into shorts. Not my shorts, YouTube shorts. And so I want you to, you know, when you see, if you're into watching YouTube shorts, give them a thumbs up. Let the algorithm know that you're enjoying them, and yeah, they're always less than a minute. It's a funny way to try and deliver information in less than a minute, and I'm really doing my best to avoid error by virtue of the really brief amount of time that I have to deliver information. You know, this singing thing, it's a funny thing. In fact, I was reading again today in a book called The Naked Voice, and I really subscribe to this idea that voice should be natural, that it should be free, that it should be unhindered with the singer being weighed down by too much information and too much desire to get the technique right. That is true. That is a truism. Equal to that truism is, I think, the pathway to that level of freedom comes about when the singer has put in the work in laying that foundation for the voice to be free and natural. And so we have to go about teaching the voice how to behave in a free and natural way. And so it's a matter of those two truisms having that really positive tension where we get to see those two worlds not collide, but be one, and have the synergy of that. So I want to encourage you to have a look at the shorts, because you know, we discuss a lot of stuff in really quick fire way, and hopefully you can really really enjoy those. And let me know. Give the video a thumbs up, and even if you have time, shorts is a funny sort of space. Even if you have time, leave a comment. Let me know that you're enjoying the shorts, as Linda does nearly every time she watches one of my videos. The wonderful Linda, who is currently moderating our live chat, always leaves me a comment, as does Mr. Mr. Dom Fomiati, and he's in the live chat as well. One of my both my private students. Anywho, we are going to get into today's Q&A. So let's do it. Okay. So as I said, if you want to watch your question answered, absolutely, throw in a super chat and we'll prioritize your question. We've already got a question here from Happy Engineering. And in fact, this was a question that Happy Engineering threw in really early. This is not the full question, but it comes close. Let's see if we can throw the question in here. So Happy Engineering, the full question is actually, after practicing low notes for a month, I am unable to reach my previous lower range. Happy Engineering is 24-year-old male. Stability increased and voice has become heavy, but my lower range appears to be reduced. Can you please advise? It's interesting, when we really isolate a particular register when we're working on the voice, we'll find that those muscles will respond. And with the lower register, we may in fact find that the voice kind of, the vocal folds, the musculature that drives that, the thyroarytenoid muscle in particular, can really bulk up, and so you really get that fuller, as you say, Happy Engineering, that fuller, the voice became heavy, you said. And so what can happen, and it's interesting, so there is value in working on the voice, the registers, different parts of your voice in isolation. But I really want to encourage you and really stress to everyone, we then need to balance the whole mechanism out. And it can be even advantageous in a practice session to make sure that after having done some really dedicated work, in this case, for example, the lower register, to then go and towards the end of a practice, perhaps after you've been doing that work, you can balance it out by doing some sirens, by allowing the voice to move up into your upper register, perhaps into your falsetto, and really then stretching the voice out, constantly looking for balance across your entire voice. Ultimately, what we're seeking, and in fact, we talked about this last week when we were answering another question, and one of my students had been given the advice to really, find a place in their voice and become comfortable and settle with that and really just sing there all the time. And what you're going to get in when we do that is a voice that really, firstly, is very limited, in notes that it has access to, but not only as far as range, but also as far as color and tone. And there's going to be so many limitations that are put onto a voice that does that. And so learning to work your voice across the full scope is so much better for you and your singing. Now, I put up Linda. I just saw I put Linda's question up there. This is actually Happy Engineering. After practicing lower notes for a month, I'm unable to reach my previous lower range. That was Linda, actually, in the live, asking to clarify. Can I just say, it's interesting that you're finding that you're unable to get as low, and it may well be that in exercising that lower register musculature, the thyroarytenoid muscle, which is the body of your vocal fold, that you may be finding that toning of the muscle has not allowed the notes, the vocal folds, to actually get as perhaps flabby as, that's not a technical term, that's just the descriptive term I'm using, and therefore, perhaps flabbier vocal folds may be able to go one or two semitones lower. I wonder though, Happy Engineering, and this would be something for you to take note of in your own practice and in listening back to your own sound, either in the moment as you're singing or perhaps on a recording. I wonder what tone is better. I would venture that I reckon the fact that you've been working in this lower register, I wonder whether the tone of your not so low notes, because you've been workshopping the musculature, is better. When I say better, of course, that's subjective, but I wonder whether it'll just be cleaner, perhaps richer, have a stronger sense and essence to the note, as opposed to less toned notes may just sound a little dull. I don't know. I'm thinking out loud, and Happy Engineering, you can throw into the chat what your actual experience has been, and that would be cool. Let's find David's question. So David's question, David McCoy, Dr. Dan, does a singer, what does it say? How does a singer matches the pitch of the beat when singing? Match the pitch of the beat. So percussion, and I am having to interpret your question here a little bit, David. Percussion can be tuned. Think of a kettle drum. They tune a kettle drum. A drummer will tune their toms and their snare, and so we certainly can tune percussion. But I'm not sure what you're actually asking in regards to the matching the pitch of the beat. Oh, here we go. There's a clarification here. How does a singer match the rhythm of the beat when singing? Well, that's a good question. You know, it's interesting when we talk about rhythm and singing, I think, and this is, actually, let me back up for a second and give you some insights into something. When I'm working with particularly a new singer, I do not use notes, transcription of notes, dots on a page that is a musical notation. Now, there's a reason for that. And I find this really helpful particularly when I'm working with pianists, piano players, because the great temptation is to read the dots, especially for someone who reads music. With contemporary music is driven by feel. It's driven by pulse. But the moment we try to lock on to tempo, we can find ourselves becoming quite locked in, quite regimented in our timing. And I remember being taught this back in my uni days, and that there had been a number of composers over the decades who had tried to build a notation system that would truly represent contemporary music. But there's a real struggle for composers and for musicologists to do this, simply because there is so much nuance in the timing for contemporary music, because it's driven by feel. And so I often, when I'm talking with singers, I don't talk to them about getting the timing right. What I talk to them about is actually working on the pulse. And the pulse is something that is far more internalized. Now, when we first start learning to do this, it is not uncommon and completely acceptable to have some way of externalizing that pulse, whether it be a click, whether it be tapping your foot, with your hand on your leg. But then what we want to do is start to imbibe that pulse, imbibe that timing, so that it becomes very much a part of us. When we do that, then that pulse is no longer, that timing is no longer clinical. Now it's starting to become more organic. And we can start to move and massage that timing, because it's now got an organic pulse-like feel. So to start with, David, I'd be encouraging you to really drive at, just trying to hear that timing, but then try to also just allow that timing to morph into more of an internalized pulse, and see how that goes. And hopefully, hopefully that will be a helpful thing for you to consider. Let me come here. This is a pretty interesting. This person is simply called Singer. So, Singer, how many years does it take to become a singer if you practice 1 hour per day? How long's a piece of string, Singer? And so firstly, and we talk about this a lot here at the channel, when you're first starting out, 1 hour per day is unlikely to end well for you. So my advice is, when you're first starting out and you're really purposefully going about developing technique, every second day for about 20 minutes is about right. And for about 10 to 15 weeks, what you'd slowly do is just build that in 5-minute increments until you're practicing every second day for around about, let's see, an hour. It's going to be give or take for you, depending on your voice, your anatomy, how your voice copes. And then as you go on, you can get to around about up to 5 to 6 times a week. But I cannot stress how important a vocal rest day is. Relative rest. We've talked about this at length here in the live chat. Can I encourage you, Singer, to jump onto the channel? I've got a number of videos about this process, and I'd really encourage you to go and have a look at it. To kind of the essence of your question, I'd really challenge you to consider reworking your approach, perhaps. And I'm presupposing your approach. So allow me to speak to what I find a lot of beginner singers come to their singing with is they've got the destination in mind, they've got the product in mind, and that is, if I practice so many hours a day for such an amount of time, for months or years, will I then be able to be a singer? And of course, as we started the show today, that's not how we approach things here at Voice Essentials. You're already a singer. And as much as this might come as a surprise for you to hear me say, the reality is there are a bucket load of people who stand on stage night in, night out, and successfully garner audience approval. They earn money singing without a single lesson. Now, those voices are at great risk, because when the tough times come, and they will, that singer may not have the built-up knowledge collateral to call upon to see them through those rough times. But I acknowledge that that's the case. So the point that I'm making here is you do not have to do singing lessons to be a singer. You are already a singer. The process of practice is the process of process. What we're doing here is we are engaging actively, intentionally with the development of our voice, which will in turn lead to us becoming more efficient, lead to us becoming more agile, more healthy, and being able to have a more sustainable voice that we then use as singers. And so it's all about you identifying as a singer first, and then thinking about the process that you are going to go along towards a product where, in one sense, we never actually arrive. you know, I've been starting to share some of my videos that I'm recording here in the studio onto into the Facebook group. For those of you who have never heard me sing before, you can jump into the Voice Essentials community group, Facebook group, and have a watch. You know, it's just been such a really positive experience for me to start doing that again. There's been a number of years, and for those of you, you've been through a cancer journey here as a family. It's been a really full-on period of time. We're coming out of that. In fact, I think we're out of that chapter now, and so I'm emerging in my own creative pursuits, which is just wonderful. And I'm a bit rusty-dusty, though. Can I tell you, I was really chuffed. So I told you a few about 6 weeks ago, I mentioned that I was going to start, you know, presenting these recordings that I'm doing, and I told many of you, and I know some of you took this or would have heard me say that I'm sending those, when I record those tracks, I'm then giving those the recordings to a friend, Daniel Sporosky, who is then doing some production work on them. And I told you that I had said to him, hey, because I'm using these tracks also for my local church and what have you, to remove any hurdles of engagement with the piece, I told him to feel free to use autotune on those tracks. And so I fully expected that he would be, you know, needing to use digital tuning to just, you know, give it a little bit of polish. I was kind of chuffed the other day when I asked him, after he'd done a number of the tracks for me already, and I said, oh, you know, how did you go with the tuning? Was there much tuning required? And he said, well, you'd be actually pleased to know, Daniel, I haven't applied a single amount of tuning to any track, which I was really chuffed with, in part because the one challenge of tuning is if not applied correctly, and Daniel would have applied it correctly, but I really hear it, the channel at Voice Essentials, we are all about authenticity. We are all about our true selves as singers, and I was really kind of thrilled that I didn't need to apply any tuning. There are bum notes in there. If you listen to the tracks, you don't have to listen far to hear some of the, I've got a bug in front of me, some of the inaccurate notes. But here's the great thing. I actually love those bum notes. I love them because it creates a sense of authenticity, a sense of rawness that I think allows me in that moment to emote and to really deliver the message of the song. Again, if you want to check that out, it's free to be a part of the Facebook community page. You can go and check that out. Or if you're interested, I've actually started a whole new channel called the Daniel K Project, K-A-Y. That was my professional stage name, and that's where I'm going to be putting all of those tracks. That too has been an interesting process because, as you know, here at Voice Essentials, we've got over 200,000 subscribers, and I don't know whether you can see, but up and behind there, I've got my silver play button, which I'm very proud of, which we got a number of years ago, and I started this new channel, the Daniel K Project, and I think when I last looked, I had the sum total of 14 subscribers, which subscribers is not what I'm doing the channel for, but I think it's kind of interesting to re-engage with starting a new channel. It's not easy to build up a new channel. So go and check that out if you get a moment. Okay. So there you go, singer. I hope you can have a think about that and think about the way you're going about approaching your singing. And I hope you I hope you got something out of that answer. Adam is asking, speaking of soul singing, would you go about developing that deep, super warm, or how? I think there's a missing H there. How would you go about developing that deep, super warm tone? Tone is all about how we manage the vocal tract and the way your rudimentary buzz that is created by the vocal folds is filtered as it travels through the vocal tract and the shapes that you create. This is why each of us sound different, because each of our anatomical structures is unique. There is a fingerprint, a vocal signature that we have, driven in part by our anatomical structure and the uniqueness thereof. And so the way we go about developing a deeper, super warm tone in accordance with our own anatomy is by developing our ability to shape and develop and filter those resonant tones. And it may be, Adam, make sure you don't miss out on the show that we'll do in, is it 3 weeks with, I go to say the name again. Do you know what? I am going to quickly jump across here, and I am going to quickly jump, and I'm going to tell you who the session will be with. Hang on, it is going to be with Dr. Trineice Robinson. If Trineice watches this back, she'll be very unhappy with me that I've forgotten her name. So when Trineice comes on, and we're going to be talking about soul singing, it may be an opportunity for you to ask that question, Adam, and ask her about how she goes about instructing that sort of R&B soul sound. So make sure you come back when that show is on, which, as I said, with Dr. Trineice Robinson, is going to be in about 3 weeks. Okay. We've got a question here from It's KG. It's KG asks, how do you know if your voice needs rest, and how would you know if you're going through a voice change during puberty? This bug is bugging me. Right. So, firstly, how do we know if we're going through puberty? Well, it's likely that you're around about, for young women, young girls, it will be, and it depends on your geographical placement. Your culture will have an influence on this. There's a number of factors, but let's just, as a guide, for girls, it's going to be anywhere between the age of 10 to 12, puberty will commence. And for boys, it'll be anywhere between the age of 11 to 13 to 14. They are, don't send me letters and saying, Daniel, this is it's ish, guesstimate amounts, right? Girls will typically go through puberty earlier than boys. So if you are of those ages, it's KG, then it's possible that you are experiencing puberty, and therefore your voice will be going through maturation and change. And there are stages to that change, you know, where we observe some developmental things. And this is going in part because, you know, that same vocal tract shape and structure that I was talking about before, your entire body is growing. And it's growing at a tremendous rate. Like, it's really, you know, in fact, a male voice is typically going to grow to up to 2.5 times its prepubescent size. So that's big growth. It's part of the reason why that level of growth creates quite a bit of structural instability, which in turn leads to those, what we often refer to as voice cracks in the pubescent male voice. But girls, you're going through the same sort of change through puberty, and the female voice is growing to around about 1.5 to 1.8 size of its original prepubescent size. And so there is definitely still change for the female voice. but it's not quite as drastic. And so we don't often hear the female voice crack as much, but you can probably remember during your high school years when you heard a female voice experience a voice crack just like the boys. That all being said, to your first question, how do you know if your voice needs rest, and how would you know? So you know if you're going through voice change due to puberty because you're going through puberty. When the one of the dead giveaways for needing voice rest is voice use. That sounds really like I'm being a bit silly, but actually we now know that basically for every minute of voice use, you need 2 minutes of voice rest. So, and that's relative rest. It's not necessarily referring to absolute silence. It's just reduction of vocal load. And we can avoid a lot of concern vocally simply by observing vocal rest, giving our voice some downtime. It is a biological instrument that will tire with use. And so we can really recharge the musculature and the energy of the voice simply by giving it some downtime and letting it plug in, recharge, and away you go. Some of the other indicators of needing voice rest is that you may start to feel a sense in which you have to labor a bit more. You've got to exert a little bit more effort to get the same outcome, the same quality of voice. That's one thing. The second thing is you might start to hear, and ladies, this can be something that you can be attentive of, you might start to hear some real aspiration in the sound. Aspiration is sort of some breathiness, some huskiness that comes into the sound. You might hear the voice actually drop in its fundamental pitch, and so the voice, you can hear it just as it's not as vibrant, it doesn't have the same zing in the sound. And so when the voice starts to tire, we start to experience many of those things. I was saying to a student this morning that it's so important that when we are using our voice, that we observe the signposts of caution as we're using the voice. And the analogy I used was when you're driving along, let's say a back road, and you're driving along and suddenly you see a sign that says 5 kilometers ahead or 3 miles ahead, the bridge is out. And you might see that sign and go, oh, that's interesting, and just keep going. And you get another mile down the road. In 2 miles, the bridge is out. Now you can see that if we just keep driving, the silly thing would be to find yourself going over the edge of that bridge that is out and then hitting the brakes. That is not the time to be hitting the brakes. The time to be hitting the brakes and doing a U-turn is back at the first signpost, when your voice was already giving you the indication that, hey, I'm labored, I'm tired, I need some rest. And so it's really important that we observe those signs and that we act upon those signs so that we're not finding ourselves driving the voice off a cliff edge and wondering, oh, why is my voice suddenly not performing for me? Now, the other challenge that we then face is, for example, perhaps you're a working singer, well, you've got to really build up your stamina so that your vocal fatigue is onsetting, firstly, much longer. That is, you've built up stamina so that the voice can go longer and not start to fall prey to the wear and tear that unchecked fatigue can bring. We do this through technique. It is so important. And this is, remember I was saying earlier in the show, I was talking about, the naturally gifted singer who's never established any technique, and they just get up on stage and they just, are marvelous, but They're doing it almost mindlessly. They don't really know why they're doing or how they do what they do. It's actually at times of fatigue or sickness where if you know why you're doing what you're doing, you can manage the voice so much more efficiently, so much better. And it's at those times that your technique is priceless. So much better to have that level of skill and know-how and to be a craftsman of your voice and to really be the master of your own voice. That's when technique really comes into its own. We're going to do one more question because I have got a student this afternoon which I will have to get to. And the last question is going to go to Amando. Actually, we might be able to answer this one relatively quickly. We might get a chance to go to another one after this. Amando has asked, hey, Dr. Dan, do you think anyone can be a good singer or do you really have to be born with a great voice? It's nature and nurture, Amando, and we can't get around that. But what most people do is they stop at nature and go, well, I haven't been born with a great voice. I'm not, you know, and I've used this analogy many times here on the live show. You know, I was born 5'8", and therefore, you know, I apparently should be disqualified from playing basketball because I'm not 6'3". I'm not, you know, tall enough to slam dunk. I never will be. Now, if I wanted to play basketball, I would have to learn to play with that height limitation. There have been many excellent NBA players who are 5'8" and shorter and have been exceptional at the game. Now, if they had have stopped and said, well, I'm too short to play, they would never have had a career in basketball. I have taught so many professional singers who could, hand on heart, tell you, I am not what people would call a gifted singer. This is them talking. I'm not someone who has a natural voice. But what they did do is recognize it's not only nature that determines whether you can be a great singer. It's also nurture. It's also cultivating that passion that you have to, you know, express yourself vocally, and not only in the development of technique, which we've just talked about earlier, but also in, you know, being a student of music and of singing and of self-expression. And when we really zone in on the development of that aspect, the nurture, then we can empower whatever our nature is. And so I hope you can hear me really clearly there, Amando. And that is, yes, there is a nature aspect to it. But there's also a nurture. And, you know, it could be argued that when we hear both of those combined, we hear some real magic. But I've heard some real magic from people who you probably in the first instance wouldn't have said were naturally gifted singers. So I really encourage you to give that some thought, Amando, and yeah, really chew on that for a moment. We are going to go to one more question, and I've got here Dr. Ian's saying he was chapped. I'm looking at this question. I don't so let me I'll put this in here. Rob is just asking. I'm going to do one more question after this, but I just want to clarify. Rob, I was saying chuffed, not chapped. That might be my Aussie accent playing up there. I was saying I was chuffed, which is actually a very English term. Chuffed means I was really happy. I was really, I felt really good about the fact that I didn't need the auto-tune, which is how in the reference that I used. I was chuffed, not chapped. Mind you, the air has been very dry recently and my lips have been quite chapped, but not so. I was chuffed. Okay, one more question, and this one's going to come from Mai, and Mai is asking, I want to know how long does progress take to grow your voice to a level you like? Well, that's going to be personally derived because I don't know what your expectations are. Your expectations for what you like might be different to mine. And interestingly, we're often our own worst critics. And so even when I say to a student, gee, I really liked the sound of what you just did, it's not unusual for a student to go, oh, really? Oh, I didn't think that was kind of what I wanted. Oh, okay, well, therein lies a difference. I'm hearing a really positive sound, and the student, often being their own worst critic, may not hear that. Let's say you're a mezzo-soprano and you want to go to soprano fully, or you're an alto and want to go to the next level. I'm going to, Maya, and I hope you don't take this the wrong way, I'll just correct a thought there. Being alto, mezzo, or soprano is not about your capacity as a singer. That's got to do with your anatomy. I know you will find people on YouTube who tell you, you know, if you're an alto and you want to be a soprano, then just be a no. I'm sorry, you can't do that. That would be like me, 5'8", wanting to be 6'3". I can't change my biology. My DNA has my height set, and your DNA has your vocal tract length, your laryngeal size. All of these and many other factors are set by your anatomy and your biology. They're from birth. That's how the chromosomes are going to line up, and this is what you're going to work with. What you can learn to do is explore the full potential of your vocal range. I find that most singers, when they first step in and start working with me, most singers are not working with their full potential voice. They're working within a restricted range, and this is what good technique does. It enables you to access, unlock and access areas of your voice that you may not have had access to previously. And you then get to explore notes, and it's almost like it would be disingenuous of me as a teacher then to go, see, look, I just added an octave to your voice. No, what I've done is simply given you the tools, maybe the keys to unlock areas of your voice that were always there, that you can now look to workshop and develop and habitate within that area of your voice and have full use of it. But that won't change your anatomy. That doesn't suddenly make an alto a mezzo or a mezzo a soprano. And certainly, it's, you know, a soprano is not better than a mezzo, is not better than alto. I'm laughing because there are some really great jokes about sopranos, and there are some really great jokes about tenors as well. And despite the fact that tenors and sopranos might consider themselves superior, we are not. And you only need a baritone or a mezzo around to to remind the tenors or the sopranos that they are not superior. So yeah, can I just really encourage you to not think about it that way. Well, there we go, folks. What a great hangout we've had today. Another great Q&A. And I hope you've really enjoyed our chats today. I hope you've enjoyed the answers, and I hope they've given you something to think about. And there were a few opportunities for us to go away and really chew over some of the thoughts that we tackled today. And so I hope you find that helpful. Next week, we are going to have Dr. Shannon Coates, after which 3 weeks later, we're going to have Dr. Trineice Robinson. But next week, Shannon's going to join us. looking forward to it because it's always a laugh. And we'll always learn something, you and me both. And so I'm hoping you can join us when we see her next week. Leave a thumbs up on the video today if you've enjoyed it. And I very much look forward to seeing you again next week when you'll hear me end each show by saying, I'm Dr. Dan, sing well.